She thought marrying a rich man meant her struggles were over. But that mansion held storms no one warned her about. Her name was Selah, dark-skinned, deep-voiced, and soft around the edges like a hymn hummed under your breath. She walked into that family wearing her dignity like a crown. But they only saw her skin, not her soul. It was a Sunday brunch in Buckhead. Table long as a sermon, linen white as judgment, and mimosas bubbling like secrets. Selah wore cream silk and her grandmother's gold brooch, hair wrapped high, back straight, eyes tender but unshaken, and there she sat, across from her, Margot Whitmore Hayes III, mother of the man Selah married, a woman who smiled with her teeth, not her heart. Now, baby, let me tell you, racism don't always come loud. Sometimes it comes buttered, folded in napkins, served with a side of fake kindness and pearls. Margot leaned over her shrimp and grits and said in that tight, condescending drawl, "Darling, could you be a dear and grab the syrup? You're just so good at helping." Then she smiled, and nobody laughed, not even Selah's husband. The room went still, the kind of still where you can hear a hummingbird's heart break. Selah stood there holding the syrup like a question. Her skin burned, not from shame, from knowing. She'd felt that burn before. In 3rd grade, when her teacher confused her for the janitor's daughter. At prom, when the white boy she crushed on said, "You're pretty for a black girl." And now again, in a mansion she was supposed to call home. She sat the syrup down, slow, didn't break a smile, didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch, just looked Margot in her cold blue eyes and said, "Funny, my mama taught me how to serve with grace, but she also taught me how to recognize a woman who never learned how to love." Whew. The whole table went quiet, baby. Even the mimosa bubbles gave up. Her husband, Daniel, cleared his throat. But Selah didn't look at him. Not yet. Because in that moment, she wasn't just defending herself. She was carrying every dark-skinned girl who'd ever been mistaken for the maid when she was the queen. And Margot's smile didn't crack. But her mask did. Now you listen close, 'cause this was just the beginning. That brunch was only the first sip of bitterness Selah was about to taste. There were letters she hadn't seen, secrets that ran deeper than fine china, and a betrayal already blooming under that mansion's polished floors. You want to know what Selah found when she opened the family's locked study drawer? Baby, it'll make your blood go cold. Now Daniel, the husband. Oh, he was beautiful, no doubt. Soft voice, ocean eyes, tender hands. The kind of man who cried quietly but kissed loud. And Selah, she loved him. Or the parts of him the world hadn't ruined yet. But love don't armor you, baby. Not when the bullets come wrapped in silk and tradition. Not when your mother-in-law calls you the help with a smile made of glass and vinegar. That night after the brunch, Daniel tried to play it off. She didn't mean it like that. She's old school. She just needs time. But Selah had heard that song before. And she wasn't dancing. Later that evening, the mansion fell into its quiet rhythm. Expensive silence, creaking floors, shadows that never rested. And Selah, she walked barefoot down the hall, not afraid, not anymore. Her skin still humming from Margot's words. Not from shame, no, from a fire passed down through generations of black women, told to smile through insult. She passed portraits on the wall, men in oil paint, all white, all grim, not a single woman, not a single drop of color. Their stares followed her like whispers, but one door at the end caught her attention, not grand like the others, made of dark wood, near black, handle cold as regret. Daniel had said it was father's old study, locked, private, let it be. But that night, something pulled her, that deep knowing pull only black women feel when truth is near. And lies try to hold it down. The door wasn't locked. She pushed it open. Slow, careful, ready. The room smelled like secrets, leather books, whiskey, dust that had seen too much. On the desk, loose papers, one old photo, and a document, folded sharp like it had teeth. Selah picked it up. Her hands didn't tremble. She'd carried heavier things than paper. It was a will, signed by Harold Whitmore Hayes II. Daniel's father. But what it said? That paper didn't just name Daniel. It had a second name, black, feminine, familiar. To Selah Monique James, upon legal union with my son. She froze. The air thickened. The chandelier above creaked like it remembered something. Selah stepped back, hand still clutching the paper, and accidentally nudged the golden globe. It spun, slowly, then stopped, and then footsteps. Soft, heavy, intentional. Coming from the stairs, she shoved the will back into the drawer, heart beating like a drumline, and melted into the shadows of the hallway. That's when she saw her, Margot, floating down the stairs in a white nightgown, looking like a ghost that never got buried right. Her face pale, her eyes not confused, but furious. She walked straight into the study, paused, looked around, then said, not to Selah, but to the room itself, "You never should have put her name in that will, Harold. Never." But Harold was long gone, which meant Margot. She was either talking to the dead or to her own guilt. Selah stepped back, quiet, heart hammering, because now she knew this wasn't just about a brunch insult. This wasn't just about race or class or that cruel little smile. This was about power, legacy, a house that wasn't just big. It was buried in lies. Selah wasn't just the wife. She was named. She was owed. She was dangerous now. And Margot? Oh, she must have felt that shift in the air. Because that night, she turned around, looked straight down the hallway, right where Selah had been standing seconds ago. Did she see her? We'll never know. But her face? Baby, her face changed. You want to know what Selah found locked inside that gold-trimmed safe? You sure? 'Cause what's in there don't just change the story. It sets it on fire. The safe was small, tucked behind a false panel in the study wall. Gold trim, fingerprint lock, hidden in plain sight. And Selah? She hadn't been looking for it. It called her. See, some things in a house don't creak by accident. Some doors open for a reason. And when your name appears in a dead man's will without your knowing, you start listening to everything. Daniel was gone the next morning. Some emergency at the firm. Selah stayed behind. Alone, but never really. Because in that mansion, silence had footsteps, and mirrors remembered faces no longer alive. She waited until the house snapped. Midday, quiet as bone china. Back in the study, the air felt thicker, like it knew she was coming back. She pressed her fingers along the back wall until one panel pushed in with a soft click. The safe revealed itself. She stared. No code, no keypad, just a print scanner and a phrase etched above it. Blood may divide, but truth returns. Selah hesitated, then placed her finger on the scanner. It blinked green and opened. Baby, it wasn't money inside. It wasn't jewels. It was a letter, a small envelope, yellowed with time, sealed with red wax, and under it, a photo, not of Daniel, not of Harold, not of Margot. It was a black woman, dark-skinned, strong jaw, eyes like Selah's, and she was holding a baby boy with pale skin, blue eyes, smiling. The back of the photo read, August 14th, 1986, Jamila and our son. Forgive me. Selah's breath caught. That wasn't her baby. That was Daniel. But the woman? She looked like someone out of Selah's own family albums. Same skin, same strength, same fire. She opened the letter with shaking fingers. The words inside were handwritten, rushed, the kind of truth that can't wait for proper grammar. If you're reading this, she didn't destroy it. I tried, Selah. God knows I tried. I loved a woman this family was never going to accept. Not because of who she was, but because of what she looked like. I married Margot, but I gave my soul to Jamila. Daniel is hers. She raised him in secret for years. Then Margot took him, called it rescue, told the world he was hers, buried Jamila's name, buried her love. But not all of us forget. You have her eyes, her grace, her fire. That's why I named you in the will. Not just for Daniel, for her, for the blood she gave, and the dignity she was denied. Selah dropped the letter like it burned. Because it did. Every word a matchstick to her chest. Daniel wasn't Margot's biological son. She'd stolen him from a black woman named Jamila, Selah's aunt by blood, which meant Selah wasn't just in that house by marriage. She was family, not by law, but by truth. She sat there shaking, not from fear, from knowing, all the side eyes, the coldness. Margot hadn't just hated her for being black. She hated her because Selah's face looked too much like the woman she erased. And now Selah had the letter, the proof, the power. But as she folded it back into the envelope, she heard something. A whisper. No, a breath. From the doorway. She turned, and there he stood. Daniel, his face pale, his eyes wide, his lips parted. But no words came, because he had seen the photo, and he had seen himself. And in that silence, one truth exploded. He never knew who his mother really was. You want to know the first thing he said when he found out he was black? Baby, it wasn't what you think. Daniel stood there like a man pulled out of a dream, staring at the photo in Selah's hand, at the black woman holding a baby boy with his eyes, at the letter half open, words trembling in the air between them. And then he said it. That can't be me. His voice cracked, not from disbelief, but from the part of himself that knew before his mouth did, before his skin ever questioned its story, before the mirror ever whispered something different. Selah didn't say a word. She just held the photo out, gentle, like passing a baby to a father who never knew he had one. Daniel took it and sat down slow, like his knees forgot how to hold him. He stared at the picture, quiet. The silence between them stretched long and heavy, not angry, not yet, just new, raw like skin under a ripped bandage. My mom, Margot, she always said I was born early, that she couldn't breastfeed. That's why there were no baby photos, no pregnancy pics. She said she lost them in a fire, but I never saw a burn mark in that house. His hands were trembling now. She lied to me. My whole life, Selah sat across from him, still, calm. Not because she wasn't shaken, but because black women been learning how to hold still in storms for centuries. She didn't just lie to you, Daniel, Selah said, voice low. She buried a woman, a history, a whole lineage, and called it love. He looked up at her then, and for the first time in their marriage, he really saw her. Not as his wife, not as the help, not even as someone who fit in, but as kin, to the very roots he never knew he had. You knew? He asked. I found the will yesterday, Selah said. Your father left it for both of us, for Truth, for Jamila. Daniel ran his hand through his hair, breathing hard. You could feel the shift happening inside him, the cracking of old foundations, the unraveling of a lie dressed in pearls and country clubs. So what do we do now? He whispered. Do we tell her I know? Selah looked out the window. The sun was bleeding into the horizon, a warm amber glow over a cold white house. You don't ask a black woman if she wants her truth back, she said. You give it. He nodded slowly, but the question still hung in the room like perfume. And what if she fights it? What if she says it's all fake? Selah stood, walked to the fire, tossed another log in, watched it catch, then said, so soft it almost disappeared into the flames. Then we let the ghosts talk. And baby, that night, they did. Because later, when the lights were low and the house was quiet again, Margot stood at the top of the stairs, watching them, listening, and in her hand, she held the torn corner of that same photograph, the original, the one she thought she destroyed. You want to know what she said when Selah finally confronted her with the truth? It wasn't sorry. Oh no, baby. It was something far colder. She stood at the top of that winding staircase like a statue carved from winter. White silk robe, hair pinned tight, face unreadable, but eyes full of fire that had never been warm. Selah stood at the bottom, Daniel just behind her, holding the photo like it was proof of a life he never lived. And Margot? She held the torn piece of that same photo, edges ragged, smudged with age. I wondered when you'd find it, she said, voice cool as glass. Your father was always too sentimental. She walked down one step at a time, slow like a verdict. Didn't look at Daniel, didn't look at Selah, just the photograph in her hand. Jamila was a phase, a mistake he refused to erase completely. Daniel stepped forward. A mistake? She was my mother. Margot's lip curled, but not with shock, not with guilt, with disgust. She was a woman who didn't belong, and neither did that child. So I took him, and I raised him right, in this family, with standards, with opportunity. Selah's jaw tightened. You stole him. Margot tilted her head. I saved him. The air in the room turned heavy, like history was pressing its hand on everyone's chest. Daniel's voice cracked. "You told me I was yours. You told me you gave birth to me." Margot walked down the last few steps, now face to face with him. She reached out and touched his cheek. He didn't move. "You are mine," she said. "I fed you. I named you. That woman gave you blood. I gave you everything else." And that's when Selah stepped between them, softly, deliberately. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You gave him a lie. One so big you wrapped it in pearls and called it protection." Margot's eyes darted to her. "And you think you understand this family? Just because he brought you in. You're nothing but—" She stopped, but Selah already knew the word she swallowed. They always do. "Go on," Selah said. "Say it. Say what you've been dying to say since the day I walked into this house, with dark skin and a diamond on my finger." Margot's lips pressed tight. And then she smiled, but not like before. This smile had no teeth. "You're just like her. Nose in places it doesn't belong. Always demanding more than you were ever meant to have." Selah's eyes softened, but not from weakness, from the ache of ancient generational grief. "We weren't demanding more," she whispered. "We were demanding ours." Margot turned, robe sweeping behind her like smoke, and walked away, but not before saying one last thing. "You'll never belong in this house. Not truly. Not while I'm still breathing." She climbed the stairs, each step a drumbeat of bitterness. Selah stood still, chest rising, fingers trembling. "And Daniel?" He reached for her hand. "I don't know who I am anymore." Selah looked at him, voice soft and sure. "Then it's time you found out. Not from her. From her." She pointed to the letter in his pocket, to the name written in ink. Jamila, his real mother. And the next morning they drove to Alabama, to the woman Margot said was dead, to the woman who had never stopped waiting. "Want to hear what happened when that front door opened? Baby, it'll break your heart and mend it in the same breath." They drove through Georgia before the sun was fully up. Quiet road, trees leaning close like they were listening. Daniel didn't speak much, just held that letter in his lap like a map back to a life he never knew was his. Selah drove, eyes forward, heart steady, but tender. She knew this road, not the pavement, but the journey. The ache of going to meet a truth you ain't ready for, but need like breath. The house was small, one story, yellow paint faded by time. A porch swing moved slow in the breeze, and sitting there was her, Jamila, older now, but strong, skin dark and glowing like polished mahogany, silver braided through her crown, and eyes, baby, those eyes were Daniel's. She stood before they even parked, didn't blink, didn't smile, just waited. Daniel stepped out first. He walked like a man underwater, like each step pulled him deeper into something holy and terrifying. La stayed back. This moment wasn't hers to hold. Daniel reached the porch, stared at the woman who gave him life, and had it stolen. "Jamila?" he asked. She didn't answer, just looked at him. Then slowly, gently, she touched his face and whispered, "I knew you'd come back. I prayed for it every night they told me to forget." He fell into her arms. No grand speech, no questions, just weeping. The kind of weeping that ain't sadness, ain't joy, just the body finally letting go of a weight it didn't know it was carrying. Selah watched from the car, let her own tears fall, because in that moment, the lie broke, and the blood remembered. They sat on the porch for hours. Jamila told stories, showed photos, told him how Margot showed up with lawyers and hush money, how the courts never looked Jamila in the eye, how they said Daniel would have a better life if he was taken in by the Whitmores. "I wasn't poor," Jamila said. "I was just black, and unmarried, and too proud to beg." Daniel listened, each word a thread stitching up his soul. And then he asked the question that broke them both. "Why didn't you come find me?" Jamila's eyes welled, but her voice stayed strong. "Because I tried, and they told me if I kept showing up, I'd go to jail. And I knew if I disappeared, you'd at least grow up free, even if it meant forgetting me." "Whew, baby. That kind of love? It don't come with diamonds. It comes with sacrifice." Daniel held her hand, didn't let go, and when Selah finally joined them, Jamila looked at her and smiled deep. "So this is the one who shook the tree." Selah smiled back. "It was already shaking. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. The three of them sat in the evening light, 3 pieces of a story finally stitched back together. But far back in Atlanta, Margot was not sitting still, because later that night, when they returned, the front door of the mansion was wide open, and Margot, nowhere in sight. But on the kitchen counter was a letter, sealed with her initials. Want to know what she confessed in that letter, baby? It changes everything. The mansion was dark when they came back. Not quiet. Empty. Selah felt it before she even turned the key. That strange stillness like a house holding its breath. The lights in the foyer were off. The chandelier above the staircase swayed ever so slightly, like someone had just walked beneath it. No Margot. No sound. Just the letter, waiting on the marble kitchen counter. Ivory paper. Thick. Heavy. Sealed with a red wax. M. Daniel picked it up like it might burn. Selah stood beside him watching. He cracked the seal, opened it slow, and began to read. Daniel, by the time you read this, I'll be gone from the house. But make no mistake, I'm not hiding. I've simply chosen not to watch what comes next. You see, I always knew this day would come. The day blood would betray legacy. Your father was weak. He thought naming her in the will would somehow redeem him. But redemption is for the dead, not the living. I did what I had to do. I saved you from a life of mediocrity, from a world that sees color before character, and I gave you everything. But now, with that girl in your ear, and that woman rising from the grave you should have left closed, you're about to hand it all away. This house, this name, this fortune. Do you really think the board will keep you when they find out? The Whitmore legacy was built on image, on control, and the moment that crumbles, everything your father built will turn to dust. So here is my final gift to you, Daniel. Don't let her, or them, drag you into their storm. They don't want justice. They want to burn everything down and plant their flag in the ashes. If you choose them, you lose me, forever. Margot Daniel read the last line twice. His hands were steady, but his face, baby, it was torn. Selah looked at him. She's not sorry, Selah said. She's just afraid. Daniel folded the letter. She always made me believe I owed her everything. Selah placed a hand on his chest. But now, you know, she took everything from someone else. They stood in silence. And then Selah noticed something tucked inside the envelope. Another document. She pulled it out slowly. It was a revocation notice. A legal move to contest the will. Margot had filed it 2 days after the brunch. She's trying to erase me again, Selah whispered. Even with Harold's signature and the letter, she's challenging it. Daniel's jaw tightened. She's not just trying to cut you out. She's trying to erase the truth, Selah nodded. And the question is, are you gonna let her? He didn't answer. Not yet, because the doorbell rang. 3 soft chimes. Selah walked to the front hall, opened the door, and there, on the steps, stood a man in a sharp black suit, a leather folder in his hand. Miss James? He asked. She nodded. He handed her the folder. You've been served. A lawsuit from Margot Whitmore Hayes, claiming Selah used manipulation to gain access to family documents and influence the will. You want to know who's listed as a co-signer on the case? Baby, you won't believe who betrayed her next. Selah stared at the document like it had thorns, each page printed sharp, the ink still smelling fresh, legal language dressed up in cold precision, accusations, manipulation, fraudulent influence, unjust enrichment, and right there at the bottom of the second page, 2 signatures, Margot Whitmore Hayes and Daniel Hayes, her husband, her love, the man who held her hand at Jamila's door, the man who wept on that porch, the man who said, I don't know who I am anymore, and let her believe he wanted to find out. Selah couldn't breathe for a moment. Not from fear, from disbelief, from that ache that comes when someone who saw your soul pretends they never looked at all. Daniel walked in behind her, holding 2 mugs of tea, still wearing the same soft expression. Selah didn't speak. She just held up the papers. His eyes found the signature, and he froze, like ice climbing up his spine. Selah, I can explain. She said nothing, didn't blink, didn't move, just whispered. You signed it. He put the mugs down, slowly. Margot, She said if I didn't, she'd bury both of us, freeze the accounts, disown me, pull every string she's ever tied around this family. She said the company board would never let a fraudulent wife inherit a dime if I didn't distance myself. Selah laughed. But it wasn't joy. It was raw. So you chose her. Daniel stepped closer. No, I chose us. This was just to buy time. Legally, I signed to stall her, to give us room. I wasn't going to file the final motion. She looked at him, right through him. You put your name beside hers, on paper, on record, while I was in Alabama holding your mother's hand. Silence. The kind that leaves bruises. Daniel stepped back, suddenly realizing the damage had already landed. You have to believe me, Selah. No, she cut in. I don't. Not anymore. She turned away, but then paused. You want to talk about inheritance, Daniel? Let's talk about what I inherited. A history of women who've had to swallow pain to stay respectable, who had to stitch dignity out of betrayal. She turned back to face him. I will not be another name on that list. She walked upstairs, each step a thunderclap. Daniel didn't follow. And for the first time since she married into that mansion, Selah slept alone. But baby, the storm wasn't done, because the next morning, she found something slipped under her door. An envelope, no return address. Inside was an old photo of a black girl, no older than 15, in a maid's uniform, standing behind a teenage Margot. And on the back, 4 words scratched in ink. Her name was Ruth. You want to know who Ruth was? And why Margot never speaks her name? Baby, it's the deepest cut of all. Come close, sugar. What you're about to hear, it goes back generations, to a silence so loud it still echoes. The photo was soft with age, edges curled, creased in the middle, sepia tones faded but not forgotten. A young black girl, dark-skinned, slim, straight-backed, stood just behind a seated white teenager in pearls. Ruth, 15, maybe 16, dressed in a pressed maid's uniform, hands folded at her waist. Behind her, teenage Margot, maybe 17, smiling wide for the camera. But not at Ruth, never at Ruth. Selah turned the photo over again. The back read, her name was Ruth, no last name, no date, no explanation, just a name, and the weight of something unspoken. She took the photo downstairs. Daniel was still on the couch, half asleep, wearing guilt like a second skin. Selah didn't speak to him. She went straight to the study. She pulled every family album off the shelf, every photo Margot had carefully arranged. And not once was Ruth in any of them. Erased. Like a whisper swallowed in a storm. But in the back of the 3rd album, tucked behind a page, she found it. A letter. Old, handwritten, torn at the bottom. It wasn't signed, but Selah knew. The handwriting was young, scared, and burning with truth. They said I wasn't supposed to read, but your mama taught me in secret, told me books were the only door I'd ever find out of here. But you, Margot, you caught us, and you told. Your father fired her, sent her away with nothing. She cried for 3 days, and the night before she left she told me, don't hate her, she just don't understand yet. But I think you did. You understood that her kindness made you feel small, that her love, for me, made you jealous. You were 17, and you hated me. Not for what I did, but for what I was. Selah sat with that for a long time. Ruth wasn't just a maid. She was a sister figure, a secret student, a girl who could have been something more, if kindness hadn't scared the wrong people. Margot hadn't always been cruel, but once long ago, she saw love offered to a black girl, and mistook it for a threat. That was the seed. And it grew into poison. That's why she erased Jamila. Why she erased Ruth. Why she tried to erase Selah. Because black love, black dignity, reminded her of a truth she couldn't bear to carry. That what she inherited was stolen. Selah walked into the hallway, photo in one hand, the torn letter in the other. Daniel stood there waiting. Who is she? He asked softly. Selah handed him the photo. Her name was Ruth, and your mother hated her before she ever hated me. This didn't start with us. This started decades ago. Daniel read the letter. His eyes welled up. She lied to me about everything. Selah nodded. And now she's trying to use you to finish what she started. Daniel looked at her. For real this time. Then we end it. All of it. Publicly. Selah raised an eyebrow. You sure? Because once this story gets out, the name Whitmore won't mean what it used to. Daniel straightened his spine. Maybe that's the point. But just as they turned to begin their plan, a loud knock hit the front door. 3 slow pounds. Selah opened it. And there, standing in a long gray coat, was Margot. No makeup, no smile. You dug up Ruth, she said softly. Selah didn't speak. Margot stepped forward. Then I guess it's time I tell you what really happened that night. You ready to hear the secret Margot swore she'd take to the grave? Baby, it changes everything you thought you knew. Come on in, baby. This one's heavy, not just because of what was said, but because of what was never made right. Margot stood in the doorway like a ghost, too proud to haunt. Face bare, voice brittle. Let me in, she said. No lawyers, no lies, just the truth. Selah didn't move, but Daniel stepped aside. Margot walked in slow, as if the floor remembered her sins. She looked at the family portraits lining the wall. All those cold stares and golden frames, none of them saw Ruth. She turned to Selah. You found the photo. Then you know her name. Selah nodded. I know more than that. Margot gave a hollow laugh. Not cruel, not mocking, empty. She sat at the edge of the couch, back straight, eyes forward. I haven't said her name out loud in 43 years. Not once. Daniel stood nearby, arms folded. Tell us everything. Margot's fingers twisted in her lap. And then she spoke. Her name was Ruth Mariah Freeman. She came to the house when she was 14. Her mama had died. Her daddy couldn't find work, so they sent her up here, to us. My mother hated her from the start, said she was too sharp for a girl in uniform. But my father, he liked her too much. He gave her books, let her read in the study, told her she was smart beyond her years. I was 17, entitled, angry. I thought I was losing him. One night I saw them in the hallway. She handed him a book. He touched her shoulder. She didn't flinch. He didn't stop. I told my mother. She went mad, called the sheriff, said Ruth had stolen from the drawer, said she was a thief. They dragged her out the next morning. She was crying. My father didn't say a word. And 2 weeks later, we got word she was found in the river. No note, no body, just her necklace on the rocks. The room went still, not quiet, still, like grief had laid a blanket over everything. Margot stared at her own hands like they belonged to someone else. I didn't push her. I didn't beat her. But I killed her. With silence, with jealousy, with a single lie I never took back. Selah's voice came soft but sure. And now you've been repeating that lie through every dark-skinned woman who walked through your doors, through Jamila, through me. Margot nodded, tears in her eyes now. Not dramatic, not performative, real. You think I hated you for your skin. I did, but not because it was dark, because it reminded me of her, her brilliance, her grace, her light in a house that didn't deserve her. Daniel stepped forward. His voice shook. You let me grow up thinking pride meant power, but you were just protecting your guilt. Margot looked at him, really looked. I was wrong, she whispered. But wrong don't die easy in a woman raised to never say sorry. Silence. And then Selah walked forward. Then say it now. Margot blinked. What? Say her name. Say what you did. Say sorry. Not for me. For Ruth. For Jamila. For every woman who couldn't speak back. Margot's lips trembled. And then she said it. I'm sorry. Ruth Mariah Freeman. I am so sorry. And with that, she broke. 40 years of silence cracked wide open. But Selah didn't comfort her. Because some apologies ain't meant to be hugged. They're meant to be heard. And then buried. So healing can grow in the soil they leave behind. Daniel wiped his face. And Selah? She walked to the window and said quietly, Then give Ruth her name back. Tell the world, not just us. Margot looked stunned. You want me to go public? Selah nodded. Truth don't matter if you keep it tucked in a mansion. Margot stood slowly, straightened her shoulders, and whispered, Then I'll do it. But just as she turned to leave, a knock came at the door. This one sharp, urgent. Daniel opened it, and there stood a man in a black suit. Mr. Hayes, he said. I'm with the firm. Your mother's assets have been frozen. A confidential leak just hit the press. Margot's eyes widened. What leak? The man looked at Selah. The photo. The letter. The name Ruth Mariah Freeman. It's all over the news. Baby, you want to know who leaked it? It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't Selah. It was someone they never expected. Now listen close, baby. Because sometimes the quietest one in the room, she's been watching the whole time. Margot stumbled back from the doorway. The leak? She repeated. Who leaked it? Selah's eyes narrowed. Daniel stepped forward. Wait, who else had access to that photo? The man from the firm cleared his throat. It came from an encrypted account, but the name attached to the file was Lila Hayes. Daniel froze. That's impossible. Lila's just the assistant, Selah said slowly. The one who never looked me in the eye. The one always listening. Margot's face darkened. Lila's my assistant. She's been with me for 8 years. She knows every password, every document. And then her voice trailed off, because suddenly she understood. Lila, light-skinned, quiet, efficient, always in the corner, always behind the scenes, filing things, watching everything, never speaking out of turn, never asking for more. But baby, still black, still watching. And now she had spoken, through a leak, that told the whole world that a girl named Ruth once lived and vanished, that Jamila's child was stolen and raised under another woman's name, that a dark-skinned black woman named Selah James was written into the will and nearly erased again. News headlines exploded within hours. Whitmore legacy under fire. Hidden truths, forgotten women. The Ruth Freeman story. Corporate heiress exposed in 40-year cover-up. Selah scrolled through her phone in disbelief. One video already had 1 million views. An old intern of Margot's telling the camera. She never said it out loud, but she acted it. Always questioning the black staff twice as hard. Always seating Selah at the far end of the table. We all knew. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, stunned. She's going to lose everything. Selah looked up. No, she's losing what was never hers to begin with. The next day, a letter arrived at the mansion. Unmarked envelope. Inside, a small note card. Simple handwriting. No greeting. She wasn't just a maid. She was my mother's sister. I found out 2 years ago. I stayed silent, but not anymore. I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. Lila. Margot sat in the sunroom, staring out at the garden. Not angry. Not yelling. Just still. Selah walked in, sat across from her. She's part of Ruth's bloodline. Margot didn't respond. Just kept staring at the roses she didn't plant. You brought her in thinking she'd serve your name, Selah continued. But she was watching, waiting. For the moment, your silence finally grew too heavy. Margot blinked. It was never about the will, she whispered. It was about the story, Selah nodded. And now the story's out. But baby, this wasn't the end. Because lawsuits were rolling in. A foundation was being formed in Ruth Freeman's name. Jamila had been invited to speak on national television. And Selah? Selah was about to receive the one call that would change her life forever. From a name she thought had been erased. You want to know who called her, baby? You ain't ready. But I can tell you, if you let me. Who? Baby, this one? This is where the shame of a legacy meets the face of justice. The phone rang late, after midnight. One of those soft, trembling rings that feels like a whisper on your neck. Selah was sitting on the edge of the bed, robe wrapped tight, watching the flicker of the city lights through the window. Daniel was downstairs, still sorting through the wreckage of a legacy built on polished lies. She picked up the phone. Slow. Hello? A pause. Then a voice. Older. Male. Measured like someone used to being obeyed. Ms. James. This is Thomas Whitmore. Board chair. Founder's grandson. The real one. Selah sat up straighter. Yes. I know the name. He cleared his throat. I won't waste your time. The press storm has forced our hand. The foundation Margot served is collapsing, and we've reviewed the original documents. Your claim is legitimate. The will was authentic. Selah said nothing. She didn't need to. The silence was already doing the talking. I'm calling, he continued, to make an offer of reconciliation. A formal invitation, actually. Selah's breath caught. To what? To the Whitmore family wing. The estate gallery. Every matriarch of the family has a portrait there, framed, gilded, hung with honor. But there's been one space left empty since Harold's passing. We would like to fill it with you. Selah's lips parted. She looked over at the empty wall across from her. "Why now?" she asked. "Because your face," he said quietly, "is the one that should have been there all along. The others ruled, but you endured. And the board agrees. It's time we put a crown where the silence used to be. Baby, a portrait. Not just a painting, a place, a mark, proof she was here, and couldn't be erased." She hung up, walked downstairs, barefoot, found Daniel sitting in the parlor with the fire barely lit. "They want to hang my portrait," she said. He looked up, eyes tired. "Do you want that?" Selah sat down across from him, thought for a moment, then whispered, "I don't want to be remembered by them. I want to be remembered by the girls who look like me, who were told they didn't belong." Daniel reached for her hand. "Then let them frame your face, Selah. But let us tell the story." Weeks passed, lawsuits settled, apologies made public, donations renamed, scholarships established in the name of Jamila Freeman and Ruth Mariah Freeman. And then, the portrait unveiling. The mansion was filled with whispers and press. Margot didn't attend. She had left the city. But Daniel stood beside Selah, Jamila on the other side, proud as a lioness. The cloth was pulled down, and there she was, Selah Monique James. Dark skin radiant, eyes steady, head high, wrapped in the colors of her mother's roots, gold thread woven through her hair like ancestral fire. And beneath the portrait, a single line etched in marble. "Dignity cannot be inherited. It must be earned." The crowd went silent, not out of obligation, out of reverence, because she had walked through fire, and now her flame lit the room. But baby, there was one more visitor yet to come, one final truth. And when Selah found out what was hidden in Margot's jewelry box, it changed how this story would end. You want to know what she found, don't you? Come closer, sugar. Because what Selah found next, it didn't just unlock a drawer. It unlocked everything Margot had tried to bury, even from herself. It was the day after the unveiling. Sunlight poured into the study, gentle and gold. Like it was blessing the silence, Selah wandered the mansion alone. For the first time, it felt different. Not like a trap, not like a test, like a place slowly being made clean. Margot had left Atlanta. No forwarding address, no goodbye. But she didn't take everything with her. Upstairs, in the corner of her old dressing room, a small velvet jewelry box sat untouched. Selah wasn't searching. She just felt it. Like the ancestors nudged her hand one more time. She opened the box. No diamonds, no heirlooms, just a small brass key. And beneath it, a folded note. 2 words. "Back closet." Selah moved to the far wall, opened the old cedar-paneled closet Margot once used for furs. Nothing inside, until she looked lower and saw a trapdoor, barely noticeable under the rug. She pulled it open. Stairs led to a storage space between the walls. Not a basement, a room meant to be forgotten. She descended slowly, dust curling in the air like memory. There, at the center of the space, an old wooden trunk. She used the key. Inside, a second will, signed, stamped, dated 7 months after Harold's death. But this one wasn't written by Harold. It was written by Margot. Selah unfolded it, carefully, and read words she never expected. "This document is to be activated in the event of a contested estate, in the presence of truth, too long denied, and in honor of the woman whose life was stolen so I could build my own. Let it be known that I, Margot Whitmore Hayes, do hereby transfer the following: the guest house, the Whitmore Family Scholarship Fund, and the garden land at 1885 Roseland Park, to Selah Monique James, rightful heir by blood, by name, and by fire." Selah's breath caught. She flipped to the final page. There, in elegant script, "You will never hear me say, 'I'm sorry,' loud enough for it to matter. So let this land speak where I failed. May you grow something in it that I never could. Margot." Daniel found her there, still kneeling beside the chest, tears running quiet. "What is it?" he asked. Selah held up the will. "She left me a garden." Daniel blinked. What? She knew what she did. And somewhere in her she wanted to give back what she stole. Not just through guilt. Through earth. Through something that can grow. A month later, Selah stood on that Roseland Park land. Red dirt, sweet air, wide sky. She pressed her bare hands into the soil and planted her grandmother's seeds. Collards, peas, sunflowers, lavender. A garden of black memory. A garden of women who endured. She named it the Freeman Garden, after Ruth, after Jamila, after every woman who was told, "You don't belong here," but stayed anyway. But baby, this story ain't done just yet, because at the garden's dedication, a little girl walked up to Selah, holding her mama's hand, dark-skinned, wide-eyed, wearing a crown of sunflowers, and she said, "Miss Selah, can I be like you one day?" Selah knelt, took the girl's hands in hers. "Baby, you already are. You ready for the final chapter, sugar? The ending where everything comes full circle? Come here, baby. Tia Grassa gon' whisper this one to your spirit, because this ain't just the end of Selah's story. It's the beginning of ours." 3 seasons passed since the storm. Spring brought healing. Summer brought planting. Fall brought legacy. The Freeman Garden bloomed like it remembered every name that was almost lost. Children laughed among the collards. Elders wept softly by the lavender. Every corner of that red Georgia earth told a story of survival, of reclamation, of black roots dug deep in stolen ground. And Selah, she became something more than a wife, more than an heir, more than a headline. She became a mirror, so that when black girls looked at her, they saw not just resilience, but proof that dignity don't require permission, that silence can be shattered, that truth, when spoken, echoes louder than inheritance. On the first anniversary of the unveiling, the Whitmore estate hosted a private ceremony, small, sacred. The gallery was fuller now. Some portraits had been removed, others replaced, but Selah's still front and center, framed in gold. A brass plaque beneath it now read, "Selah Monique James Eyre, by truth not by permission." And below that, 4 names engraved in delicate script: Jamila, Ruth, Lila, Freeman. Daniel stood beside her that night. He had changed too. Let go of the shame. Learned to hold space, not control it. They weren't what they were before. They were becoming. "You ready to say something?" he asked. Selah smiled. "I already did. The garden is my speech. The silence is my mic. And that portrait? That's for the girls who never got one." Later, as the guests left and the lights dimmed, Selah stayed behind. She walked up to the frame, ran her fingers along the edge, and whispered, "They said I didn't belong in this house, but now my face watches over it. They said I was too dark to be family, but this gold looks better on my skin than it ever did on theirs." She turned to leave, but paused and looked back once more, her voice barely a breath. "This ain't just for me. This is for every black woman who carried grace through fire and still smelled like lavender at the end. And baby, that's how it ends. Not with a bang, not with revenge, but with a bloom, a garden, a portrait, a truth finally seen. So, if this story touched your heart like it touched mine, leave a word below. Tell me who you're planting for, who you're reclaiming, who you are becoming. Tia Grassa's always here, sugar, with stories for souls that been through the fire and came out shining. The end if you'd like another story, baby. Just say the word. Tia Grassa got plenty more.